All right, so next we'll move into the ground classification. So what we're gonna do is, let's go back over to point cloud task again, and hit our little gear icon to go to the point cloud task manager, and let's add a new one. And the task type for this one will be the very top one, adaptive 10 ground filter. And I'm going to give this one a name. I'm going to call this one adaptive 10 seed surface. We're actually going to break this task into two separate parts. The first one is going to be generating our seed surface. So I'm going to hit OK on that and hit OK on this. And this is one of the more complex point cloud tasks. It's got a lot of options to kind of talk about here and set properly. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to change my units to meters and make sure that this radio button right here is set to advanced. I think it defaults to standard, but we want to go over to advanced.
It seems I don't have all these options here.
If it's not, just be sure to drop down your point cloud tasks and grab the one that you just made. What we're going to want to do on this one is, these settings shouldn't change, but we should check them anyway. Notice here on the source points how it's got double brackets on it. Anytime you see that, that means that there's an active filter applied. And that's important to know, because if you're ever trying to troubleshoot some kind of aberrant behavior that you're not understanding, you should always check to see if you've got a filter applied that you didn't mean to, or the incorrect filter, or you shouldn't have a filter. So I'm just going to click this source points and look at what kind of filter we've got on here. And if I look at it, you can see that the returns tab right here, notice that the icon is yellow, whereas the other ones are gray. When it's yellow like that, that means that there's an active filter applied on this. So it's important to recognize that. And on this returns tab, this sort of matrix view is not immediately intuitive, but what it's basically saying is, if this button's clicked, then we are filtering by first returns. So anything that is a single return will be shown. This next one is for 2 returns. So the way this is set right now, we're going to get the second return of 2 returns, but we're going to admit the first return of 2 returns, and so on and so forth all the way down. The 515 sensor only has 2 or 3 returns, I think. Yeah, so I hit scan on this. If you ever want to calculate the numbers in your point cloud, it doesn't do it automatically just for performance reasons, but you can hit scan. And now I can see that I have 25 million points that are single return only. I have 8 million points that are first return of 2, and those will be omitted from the tool that we're about to use. And I've got 7 million points that are second return of 2, and that's what we want to keep. We do have presets for this setting, so if you see over here on this drop down, there's options for first return only, all returns, or last returns is what it should default to. That's what we want to use. So you don't need to change anything on this, but it's just important to know what these options are. But one setting that we do want to apply is, let's go over to the classification tab. And on this one, currently all of our points are in the class 0, created but never classified class. But eventually, as you iterate on your data set and you classify trees and buildings and high noise, low noise, various things, you're going to start getting points in different classes. And if you run your ground classification after that, you only ever want to use class 0 and 1 as your input. So what I'm going to do on here is, we've got these 3 buttons here for toggle all classes on, toggle all classes off, and switch selection, or invert. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit toggle all classes off, and then I'm manually going to click 0 and 1. And be sure that your filter settings over here is set to filter only, which means that only class 0 and 1 will be input into this tool to be evaluated as a ground class or not. So if you got all that set up that way, just go ahead and hit OK. And let's look at the destination class on the next one. So go ahead and click on destination class. And we're not going to change anything here, but it's worth just looking at to see what we got. So it should default to class 2 ground, which is what we want. So you can just hit OK on this. And let's go through some of these other options. Units set to meters, advance. We do want to hit generate seed points on this one. For the seed sample distance, I like to use 3. Let's use 3 today. So that's 3 meters. And of course, these values for the values for all of these are completely up to the user, and you should experiment with them and learn how they work and how they'll give you different results. So on the next one, node insertion parameters. This isn't going to apply for this tool. We can ignore this box for now. And on the very bottom box for iteration control, let's just change that to classify only seed points and hit apply. So at the current state, what this is going to do is it's going to create this, like what we saw in the PowerPoint. This grid is going to be 3 by 3 meters, and it's going to pick the lowest point within each of those cells. So let's go ahead and hit apply. And once you've got that set up, just go ahead and hit execute point cloud task per project and run that. And this should be a fairly quick tool. And once that completes, you can see that it actually superimposes a grid over here. We'll delete this in a second. It's not necessary for data. It's just sort of a, just a tool to help you see. All right, so what I'm going to do now is, did everybody get to this point? Does everybody's look like that? Okay. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to change my 10 surface. I'm going to change it back to points for a minute. And then also over here on this filter drop-down menu, I'm going to go ahead and change mine to ground. And what we're going to need to do then is come over to this white and red pyramid, force 100% resolution, and click that. And now if you kind of surf around a bit, you can see that we've got 1 point per cell. And that's the lowest point. I'm going to go ahead and go back over to the table of contents. And you can see you should have 2 shape files in here for block seeds and seed grid. I'm just going to control select those 2, right click and delete. We don't need those yet. And I'm going to go ahead and I should have showed you some of this navigation tools, but we do. If you look at this little globe one over here, this is a zoom to full extent. So if you click that at any time, it'll zoom back to your full map. I'm going to turn my control points off too. We don't need those at this point. So this is my seed surface in points. I'm going to change it back to 10 view to get a better view of what this looks like. And you can see that it pretty much penetrated the trees. We got a nice smooth surface here around the trees, but we also have we got the rooftops, and we have some sort of noise and garbage on the very periphery of the map. If I go back to my map view, you can see that I'm going to draw a profile perpendicular to that, and you can see that's exactly what happened right there. So we want to get rid of that. So what I'm going to do is we'll go ahead and start looking at some manual classification tools. So just draw a profile perpendicular to the edge here. It can be fairly, when you're classifying in a profile, you generally want somewhat of a wide profile width, just so that you're doing more work in larger volumes. So once you have this profile open, what I'm going to do here is, you can see we've got a bunch of tools here on the right, and this is classify points above line, classify points below line, classify points with a polygon, and then we have a small, medium, and large paintbrush. and then we have a destination right here. So destination, I generally put this in a class 1 for unclassified. You could make the assumption that these are trees, and you could put it to a vegetation class if you want to. I'm just going to go with class 1. And for this particular portion that we're looking at, the best tool for the job would be classify points above line. That's going to do the most work for you. And the way this tool works is, here in the profile, I'm going to left click an area, drag my cursor, and you can see that it starts to outline those points. And once I reach the end of the area I'm interested in, I will left click again, and then just hit the space bar to classify them out. So those points move from ground class to class 1. And you'll also notice that it updated my 10 up here on my map view. And you may also notice, see, I've got our rooftop over here on the right side. I could have classified that out prior, but it's a good exercise to use these manual classification tools. So I'm going to hit that rooftop as well. Again, left click an area, drag your cursor, outline them, left click again, and hit space bar. And once you do that, back in the profile view, if you use your mouse wheel to scroll up and down, you'll notice that it actually jogs through your profile up and down, or at least not up and down, but perpendicular to whatever area you're looking at. So here's some more noise that I need to get rid of. I'm just going to use I'll use the large paintbrush tool just to kind of show how that works. See how I've got a paintbrush tool here now? I can just left click and drag around and outline those points and hit left click. The paintbrush tool is a little bit better for doing more precise work. Usually using the above and below line tool, it gets the most work done for less clicks. So I'm just going to keep scrolling through my profile here and just kind of getting rid of these erroneous points. Get rid of rooftops, get rid of vegetation. One thing I kind of should have shown before this is I'm going to open up my live view and scan again, and we can actually get a count of what's happened here so far. Let's see what we got. So you can see I got about 8,000 ground points. That's my seed surface. And so far I've changed 93 points of noise so far. But let's just keep going through this data set and get it nice and cleaned up.
Yeah, it's still not updated.
If you ever have any questions about what, if you're like, I don't really know if this is a tree or ground or whatever, you can use the Image Explorer tool. So this left vertical tool, if you click on this, what will happen is you can click on an area and it will show you all of the matching photos for that area. So like you can see, I got a good example over here. So see, these two right here, these look like low noise that we need to get rid of, right? But actually, if I click on this right here, you can actually see that this is a drainage. Like there's an actual like culvert drainage there. So this isn't low noise, it's legit. But this one is low noise. Let me click on that. See, that's a car. So if you ever need to do a deep inspection, you can just use that tool. And if you wanted to go ahead and jump into that, if you'll notice right here in our parking lot, see there's a bunch of low noise there. Yeah, that's low noise underneath the cars, so that's got to go too. But you got to be careful about what you call low noise because, like I said, you got that culvert. Sometimes you can see tree tips and other things that are legitimate, surface features. I know this might seem slightly tedious, but what we're doing a little work on the front end, and it saves us a lot of work on the back end. Because if you have a poor quality ground surface, you're going to have to do a lot of cleanup later on to straighten it out, and that can be extremely labor intensive. Once you get to the point where you want to start classifying out low noise, you can use the classify points below line tool for the exact same thing. So you can see on this one I got what a probable low noise right here. So just going to draw over that, and same thing. All right, so that's my cleaned up seed surface. So if you get through everything, it should hopefully look something similar to that. Another neat tool that we can look at right now that we've got this seed surface going on too is we've got an option here for display contours. And this will go ahead and kind of give you a preview of what contours might look like for your site. If you hit the drop down, there's also an option for smooth contours. And if you control click that button, it will come up with options to set the contour interval. So, all right, so for the next step, let's go back over to our Point Cloud Task tab. Open up our Point Cloud Task Manager, and we're going to add a new Point Cloud task on this, and this is going to be an adaptive 10 ground filter as well. Again, we're splitting this process into two separate pieces. So I'm going to call this training adaptive 10 iterations. And once you get that, you can just hit OK and OK. And we're going to need to review some more settings on this. This will be similar, but some very key differences than the last one. So I'm going to go ahead and hit source points again. And on this, let's see, I'm going to, for classification, hit toggle all classes off and turn 0 and 0 and 1 back on. And we want to check the returns tab again and make sure that it's like the previous one where we have last returns. I'm going to hit OK on that. I'm actually going to, let's go ahead and turn off this force 100% resolution for a minute. We're not going to need that here in a second. And let's click on destination class. And on this, we're going to use a destination class will be ground just like last time, but this time we're going to set the key points and put it to set just like this. And the reason why we're going to do this is because if we don't like the results of doing these iterations, we can create a filter that will filter ground points by key points and unclassify them. So it's basically an undo button that we're going to set up for ourselves. And that way, if we want to undo it, when we come back, that seed surface we just spent time cleaning up will be as it was. So it's a good time-saving hack, life hack. Just like the last one, let's be sure to set our units to meters on this one.
And you set in a destination of ground again?
Yeah, ground with a key point set.
Okay.
Yeah. So we want advanced settings. On this one, you can set the seed sample distance to 3 again. It actually doesn't matter because we need to click on this button right here. Use existing destination points only. So what this is going, we're telling the tool that it's going to only evaluate those seed points that we had left over. On the next one, node insertion parameters, we want to use this box for use specified values for all iterations. I'm going to change my angular threshold to 1 degree and my maximum distance to 15 centimeters, 0.15. And these 1 degree and 15 centimeters, these are extremely conservative values. You can bump these numbers up if you want it to be more aggressive.
15 meters?
15 centimeters, so 0.15.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I mean, hang on, I said that wrong, didn't I? No, that's it, okay. Yeah, like I said, these are very conservative values. You could bump the angular threshold up to 2 degrees as much, and the maximum distance up to maybe 50 centimeters. But the more you increase that, the more likelihood that you're going to get of getting sort of erroneous points, like the ground filter could climb up like mailbox posts and car tires and pieces of brush, grasses and stuff like that. So it's always a trade-off, you know. On this one, let's do a mid-edge climbing algorithm. This is supposed to be an algorithm that can sort of help it climb over train tracks and curbs and stuff like that. So if you're in a purely urban environment like a city, using that might be okay, but I've found when there's any kind of vegetation around, it could be more of a problem than it solves. So we're going to do a mid-edge climbing algorithm. And for perform iterations, I like to do 3. And this is another one of those values that can be more or less aggressive depending upon the value you set for it. You could set it up to like 10 or something and it'll probably start making a bunch of crap, you know. But 1 or 2 might be a little too less. So once you got all those settings in there, just hit apply and just verify that everything looks like this. And when you're ready to run it, just hit the execute point cloud task for a project to run it. And this is one of those tasks that, depending on data size and computer, it could take, I've seen it take as much as 10 minutes or something. But this is a fairly small data set. And you'll start to see your results come in. Keep in mind, too, that the original seed surface that we were working from was about 8,000 points-ish. So it'll be good to see what it updates to. I'm guessing this will probably be like, 10 million, 12 million, something like that. We'll see what happens. All right, so there's my finished surface after the iterations. You can see it basically looks the same. It's just got, vastly more detail. And also, if you had problems with noise, like around your edge or low noise, those might be a little bit more exaggerated now. So you'll definitely be able to pick those out.